All right. Well, hello there, and welcome to our midweek church chat. Today we are talking about why the Bible is so violent all the time. Well, actually, not all the time, but the Old Testament, at the very least, is very violent. Last stream, we talked about slavery in the book of Exodus. We're kind of studying up. We're going to be putting out a video on kind of the middle of the book of Exodus, and so we're going through and preparing by watching a Bible Project classroom video that's doing a really deep dive, and then we're going to distill that information to put out into a nice clean couple of videos on the book of Exodus. And so we are talking about conquest passages today. Last time we talked about slavery, coming out of Egypt, and then all of a sudden switching up, and now the people of Israel own slaves. That's a bit confusing. And so we are going to continue that conversation today by taking a look at this Bible Project series that needs to be refreshed. Let's go ahead and restart. There we go. That's better. Wouldn't be a church chat stream without a couple of glitches. But we are going to continue with this Bible Project Classroom with Dr. Carmen Ives, who is an expert on the book of Exodus. And I'm very excited to be learning, and I'll provide some commentary along the way. So let's jump in.
We're going from one controversial topic to another. We've just talked about the slavery laws, which I don't think we should call slavery. And I've tried to show that God's character can be seen in trying to protect the vulnerable when they're in dire straits. Now I want to turn our attention to chapter 23. We get a hint of what's going to happen when the Israelites enter the Promised Land. And that the entering the Promised Land is usually called the Conquest. Conquest might not be the best word for it.
Okay.
But what I want us to do is zero in on this last half of chapter 23 and see if we can make sense of why, this is the age-old question, why would a good God, a loving God, tell his people to slaughter the population of a land?
That is a good question. And we did that as a part of our Big Questions series. We kind of explored that a little bit. We got a couple of videos going up. I think we have one going out tomorrow as well on this topic. But we're going to be talking about Exodus 23 in our Through the Bible video. So this is actually really important.
It just seems so inconsistent with his character. It seems so unfair. And so we're going to read it more closely and more carefully, and I hope that this will be helpful to you to help you make sense of this. I doubt I will be able to fully satisfy all potential objections that you have to it, but I hope this will set you on a good trajectory of thinking. The first thing that we notice in chapter 23, verse 20, is that God is going to send an angel ahead of them to guard them along the way and bring them to the place he has prepared. This is interesting. This is an interesting mention because we actually don't get any stories about the angel actually doing this when they leave in Numbers. So it's sort of intriguing. What is this doing here? Yahweh's messenger, they're supposed to pay attention to him, verse 21. Listen to what he says. Don't rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion since my name is in him. In case you're curious, it's not quite the same thing as bearing the name, because here the name is in him. He seems to be, it's similar but not the same. He's an authorized representative of Yahweh, and therefore don't be rebellious, because that would be like rebelling against me.
That's interesting. I've often heard in passages like this instance, and this angel of the Lord being referred to as a Christophany, which is maybe something that we'll dive into. We'll see how relevant the subject is for this video. It might not be, but a Christophany is supposedly like a sighting of Jesus in the Old Testament, which has some interesting complex, intriguing. I don't know how valid time travel implications involved in it. And it seems like maybe bending over backwards a little bit to try to fit Jesus into the Old Testament. But on the other hand, what is this angel that God is sending? And why does he apparently not show up in the book of Numbers? So something interesting that I'd like to hear more on.
If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and will oppose those who oppose you. One thing I appreciate about this is that it seems to recognize that God has not told them everything they need to know in the land. Like, we've just had 3 chapters of laws, or 4 chapters of laws and instructions, but this is not the final word on the subject. God recognizes that they're going to need ongoing instruction, that it's not as though God just hands them a checklist and says, all right, bye-bye, have fun storming the castle. He doesn't just send them out with a checklist. He wants an ongoing relationship with them. So he sends this representative with them who is going to guard them, teach them, and they're supposed to follow his instructions, which means there's still more to learn. So they get protection, guidance, ongoing instruction, and then leadership in battle. Verse 23 says, my angel will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out. We've already had a list like this back.
Wipe them out is pretty crazy. I'm very interested to see how she's going to address this, because it seems to clearly say that God is going to wipe out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people groups. That's kind of crazy.
Back in, I think, chapter 5, where there's an anticipation that when they go into the land, these nations will be there. It didn't say whether they were just going to have a welcoming committee at that point, or what's going to happen with these nations, but it's a bit ominous. What happens? How are the people in the land going to respond?
I would imagine not well to being wiped out. That seems like something that they would not enjoy, to put it lightly, at the very least.
But here it says, I will wipe them out. So what I'd like to do as we read the rest of this is I would like us to read it, and I want you to listen for blood. Because we tend to think of the conquest as something very bloody in which a lot of people died. We think of it in terms of genocide.
Yeah.
But when we slow down and read the text, it's a little harder to find the blood.
Okay.
So,
interesting.
Shara, could you read for us, starting in verse... You can start in verse 24. I did the hard names. Verse 23.
Thank you. You shall not bow down to their gods and worship or follow their practices, but shall tear them down and smash their pillars to bits. You shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. No woman in your land shall miscarry or be barren. I will let you enjoy the full count of your days. I will send forth my terror before you, and I will throw into panic all the people among whom you come, and I will make all your enemies turn tail before you. I will send a plague ahead of you, and it shall drive out before you the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites. I will not drive them out before you in a single year, lest the land become desolate and the wild beasts multiply to your hurt. I will drive them out before you little by little, until you have increased and possessed the land. I will set your borders from the Sea of Reeds to the Sea of Philistia, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand.
That's interesting, right? Did you clock that? It said, I will drive them out, right? We got wipe them out and then drive them out. I wonder if it's the same word translated 2 different ways, or if it's 2 different words. And all of this seems to be more of a pushing out rather than a slaughter.
And you will drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. They shall not remain in your land, lest they cause you to sin against me. For you will serve their gods, and it will prove a snare to you.
Okay, thank you. So where's the blood?
No blood. Right? He even says, I'll remove sickness.
Maybe what we could do is break this up. There are some things God says he's going to do and some things he tells them they're supposed to do. So let's break it down. What is it that Yahweh is going to do? What does he say he will do in this passage?
Remove sickness, no miscarrying.
He says that he will be the one to wipe them out. Mine says to blot them out. And it says that he'll bless their bread and their water.
Yes.
Their women and their children.
Yep. Okay, so he is going to oppose them in verse 22. He's going to wipe them out in verse 23. I'm very struck by verse 27. I will send my terror ahead of you and throw into confusion every nation you encounter. I will make all your enemies turn their backs and run.
That's interesting. I wonder if that's like a cultural phrase, because that sentence doesn't make a ton of sense in English, and we're seeing some contradictions, right? Is God going to wipe them out, like in verse 23, or drive them out, like in verse 28 to 30? And he also said it's like it'll be progressive, like they will be pushed out over the course of many years, so that harm doesn't come to the land. Like what's going on? Like what's the difference? What's the difference? I think we'll get into it.
That seems to be plan A, is to make them so afraid of Israel and their God that they just leave the premises, in which case nobody has to die. And then your translation said that God would send a plague. Mm-hmm. Mine says that he would send the hornet ahead of them.
Oh.
I have no idea what that means. But in some way, God will drive them out.
Interesting.
Little by little. He's going to make it so that they evacuate. And then in verse 31, it says he'll establish their borders and give the people into Israel's hands. That doesn't get specific about what's going to happen after they're given into their hands. That could be bloody, but it doesn't say that explicitly. Then it says, you will drive them out before you. So whoever fails to leave because of the terror and the hornet or the plague is then leaving because they're afraid of the Israelites themselves.
I think, at least to the best of my knowledge, that phrase, give the people into so-and-so's hands, right? In this case, Israel, is like a cultural thing where it's like, oh, you are, you lose, like the other people win. Because I think that same phrase is used to describe Israel being given into the hands of Babylon and Persia, and also into the hands of like their own sin and things like that. Like they're turned over into. I might be misremembering that last one, but it's typically not necessarily slavery, but more so like they have to submit to the will of the victors. And so that might make sense with like Israel pushing them out, or at least God's command for them to push the people out.
Okay. What is Israel supposed to do?
Great question. I don't know.
Utterly overthrow them and break their pillars to pieces.
Okay.
Right? In verse 24, you shall utterly overthrow them.
Yes. You must demolish them and break
the idols?
their sacred stones to pieces.
Or
What
the
is
people?
the them? If we look back at the antecedent of that.
Just above it, it says, you shall not bow down to their gods nor serve them.
Good. So we have plural gods that they're not supposed to bow down to or worship, and then they're told to utterly demolish them, meaning the gods, not the people. I think that's so important for us to see. They are on a religious cleansing mission. They're going to come into the land, and best case scenario, everyone will be gone already. They will have already fled. And Israel's job is to destroy the places of worship, to demolish the gods, break the sacred stones, and in contrast to that, worship Yahweh.
Okay.
So it's a cleaning house religiously.
So it sounds like the plan is for God to drive out the people. They'll leave without bloodshed. And then Israel kind of just steps into the ghost town and makes it home, is what it sounds like.
So they're supposed to not bow down to worship their gods, demolish the gods and sacred stones, worship Yahweh. We already mentioned in verse 31, they're supposed to drive out the people, whoever's still around, who hasn't been driven out before. Verse 32 is interesting. Do not make a covenant with them or with their gods. I don't know if you've ever tried to make an agreement with someone who's dead. I hope not.
They already have a covenant with Yahweh.
That's probably not, like, if they'd killed them, then making a covenant wouldn't even be a possibility. So do not make a covenant with them presumes there's still some of them living. Do not let them live in your land, or they will cause you to sin against me. It doesn't say to kill them. So what about the other passages? Because this is not the only place where it talks about the conquest or them entering into the land. Maybe the blood comes somewhere else. We'll look at another passage. First, let's ask, why can the Canaanites not live in the land? What's the point?
It says worship there, but that's my guess as well. I didn't say it first. I didn't say it fast enough. But yeah, like, it's the whole point of turning over the temples, destroying the idols to the other gods, and not making covenant with those gods. Yahweh wants to be their one and only God.
Worship, yes. Do not let them live in their land, or they will cause you to sin against me, because the worship of their gods will certainly be a snare to you. That is the one and only reason they can't be there, because it would pollute the worship of Yahweh. Their hearts would be pulled astray, and they would have other gods before Yahweh.
And I don't think that's just like a jealousy thing. Like, I don't think Yahweh is saying oh, I'm just trying to be possessive of you so that you can't live your life, but more so that, like, these other gods will be more permissive of things that aren't good for you. And so I'm trying to protect you from these things that will be a snare to you, aka will end up causing you harm.
Is not because they're the wrong ethnicity, they speak the wrong language, they don't eat the right thing. Like, it's not about cultural differences, it's about worship differences.
Carmen, isn't there a conversion opportunity here? Like, can they have circumcised the Canaanites and brought them into Yahweh's covenant partnership?
We don't see sort of a clear altar call kind of moment. But we do have examples. We have the example of Rahab, who not only does she say, we're all afraid of you, I want to join you guys, and she joins them, but she actually becomes the great-great-grandmother of King David.
That's a good point. Rahab does say, we're all afraid of you. We've heard the tales of your people. We don't want to mess with you. That's a very good point. So it sounds like what God is saying here happens, which is great. That really adds a level of consistency to the narrative of the point that Dr. Carmen is making.
Is in the line of David. Boaz's mother is Rahab. And so you can see how God prepares Boaz to accept Ruth as a Moabite into the family of Israel, because his own mother has come into the family line that way too. So I think we have stories that illustrate this is a possibility, but there's not like they don't send out missionaries first. I wish they did. That's what I wish. Like, if I were writing the story, I'd be like, let's evangelize first. But
I wonder if that's just not how she's maybe about to say the same thing, but maybe that's just not how this culture works, right? It's a conquest culture, and so the fact that God's plan is to drive out the existing people group without bloodshed is already a pretty radical thing.
That's not the moment we're at in God's redemptive plan. Like, the plan is clear this space, set up Israel as like the city on a hill, and then the nations will come. So it's not a go and tell. It's a come and see. And so God's preparing for that phase in His plan. So let's look at a couple of passages in Deuteronomy just to kind of close the loop on this, because I think this is helpful. Again, there's still the discomfort of, these people were there first. Why are you taking their land? I mean, that's still hard, but if it's not a genocide or wasn't meant to be a genocide, that helps. So let's look at Deuteronomy 7, 1 through 6. I'll read it this time, and I want you to listen for blood. When the Lord your God brings you into the land you are entering to possess and drives out before you many nations, the Hittites, Girgashites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, 7 nations larger and stronger than you. And when the Lord your God has delivered them over to you and you have defeated them, then you must destroy them totally.
Interesting. And for context, Deuteronomy is written by Moses at the end of his life to the next generation that will be going into the promised land.
I'm, again, reading from the NIV, that's the Hebrew word herem. You're supposed to herem them. That word, in its core meaning, doesn't mean to kill. I like how John Walton defines it in his Lost World of the Conquest as removed from human use. Something that's herem is off limits. You can't use it, you can't live there, you can't make a covenant with them, you can't intermarry with them. So destroy them totally is really herem them, that is, set them aside. They're not available to you to build a society with.
Yeah, it's like interesting wordplay there in English. It's not erase them as like eliminate them, but like erase them as in leave no trace that they were here. Not because they were killed, but because they're not there anymore. Does that make sense?
Yes. Make no treaty with them and show them no mercy. Do not intermarry with them. Do not give your daughters to their sons or take their daughters for your sons, for they will turn your children away from following me to serve other gods, and the Lord's anger will burn against you and will quickly destroy you. Again, same reason. It's an issue of worship. He doesn't say, don't intermarry with them because that would dilute Jewish blood. He doesn't say that. This is what you are to do to them. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, cut down their Asherah poles, and burn their idols in the fire. For you are a people holy to Yahweh your God. And this is, again, the same thing that says on the high priest's medallion on his forehead, a people, Kodesh LeYahweh. Yahweh your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his Segala. So because you're the Segala, you can't make covenants with them. Like, you're in covenant with me. You need to have exclusive allegiance to me. If you make a covenant with them, then you have split allegiance. And I want all your allegiance to be to me. And the to-do list he gives them is all smashing stuff. It's not smashing heads. I just think that's really helpful to see. Deuteronomy 12 is another example. The first 4 verses, again, are telling them when they get into the land, they're supposed to destroy all the places of worship. It's the same list. Break down their altars, smash their sacred stones, burn their Asherah poles in the fire, cut down the idols of their gods, and wipe out their names from those places.
Yeah, wipe out the names.
That's the mandate that Israel has as their...
Wiping out the names is much more clear. And I like that rephrasing. This is why context is so important. I had someone in our YouTube comments coming out and saying, like, you keep saying context, that's a cop-out. But, like, no, like, we're trying to understand a culture that is 2,000 years old and is halfway around the world, right? Like, we are doing our best to decipher a language that is no longer spoken. This is ancient Hebrew, which is different from modern Hebrew. And so, like, we have to do a lot of work to understand what's happening here. And so when we see the same thing rephrased several times, it's important to look at how it's used in each of those different contexts to get a better idea of what's being said. And so this, I think, unlocks something for me, right? It's wiping out their names from those places, not wiping out their lives from those places. There's no blood in these passages. Like, I can't believe that I didn't see that before. Like, there's no blood in these conquest passages. That doesn't make any sense. If it was really a conquest, there would be blood. Right? We see that with the Crusades. There was tons of blood, way too much blood. That was a huge dark era in Christian history. We don't see that here. It's just not there.
Following Joshua into the land in the book of Joshua. Yes, there's blood. There are people who resist. They don't leave. And so there are battles in which people die. But that's not the whole point of it. To me, that's helpful.
Yeah, it's like the battle isn't the plan, right? Even like we see with Jericho, like they march around the walls of the city with trumpets. That doesn't seem like a conquest, right? And there are battles that happen along the way, but that's not the plan. Still strange that the people are being pushed out of their land, but they have their lives. And I'm curious to see if we address where these people go. Like, is it just part of their land? Is it all of their land? Like, it's the land being occupied by them, but is everyone kind of just shifting and making room, like on a train? Like, if we think of the 7 nations as 7 people who are on a train, and Israel's kind of just like squeezing their way in, right? Because that feels a lot better morally to me than maybe how this has been taught in the past.
Questions or comments?
I think it's helpful even just in reading those passages where it says to like destroy them completely, that right underneath it there's that and don't make covenants with them because they're still around.
Yeah.
Because if you just read it the first time, you're like, oh, they're completely destroyed, they're totally gone. That's so sad, that's so many people presumably dead. But then when you know, God keeps being like, oh, no, don't make covenants with them, still stay away, that, you know, just makes you stop and think, oh, wait, they're not all dead. And the point there is just like the allegiance and, and it being in agreement with them when we shouldn't be.
Yeah. One thing that I learned from John Walton that's helped me with this is this word harem that means removed from human use. If you think of it in this context of, we talked in a previous session about functional ontology versus material ontology. So if the creation story is less about the stuff God made and more about bringing order to it, then harem is like the reverse of that. So it's less about eliminating the stuff and more about dismantling the order.
Okay.
And that's what we see in Egypt, right? Yes, the army died in the sea, but the plagues are not primarily killing people, aside from the last one. It's mostly disrupting the society so that it can't function as it has. And that's what's supposed to happen when Israel enters the land. The societies that are built around the worship of false gods are no longer supposed to be in operation. We have a hard time seeing religion or worship as the very center of society, but in an ancient context, the temple would have been the center of religious and civil and social life. Everything revolved around it. So by dismantling the worship of a false god, there goes the government. There goes the social support structures. It's all that the people are scattered, and they're going to have to, they enter that liminal space of having to, okay, how are we going to do this now? And there is the possibility of conversion, the possibility that they say, oh, Yahweh's the greater God. We should probably learn how to worship him. We don't have a lot of stories of that, but it is open as a possibility. Other questions?
Wow. Good stuff.
So I guess when I think of like the terms like ethnic cleansing or, them going through the land, immediately my mind just jumps to like Spanish Inquisition and Salem witch trials, the medieval crusades, where there's just like people are being burned at the stake or people are being hanged or blood, just like really, really bloody.
Yeah, the afterlife of these texts has been really bloody. The ways that people have looked to the Torah to justify ethnic cleansing is really horrible. I think if we read it well in its ancient context and we're paying attention to literary design, to theological themes, that helps prevent us from repeating that mistake.
Yeah.
But there's no question but that generations of Christians have used seemingly violent text to justify, or use biblical text to justify their violence against others, and it's terrible. Really terrible. This is a limited time instruction. The conquest instructions are limited to a certain time in history in which God is bringing Israel into the land and clearing a space for us, a grand social experiment, to be the city on the hill. They're not a paradigm or a pattern that we're supposed to continue to follow in each generation. And if we miss that and confuse it and think, well, it's in the Bible, we have to do this stuff, that's really problematic.
Yeah. I would argue that a lot of the Bible is like that it's instructions for a time and a place, and we can gain some wisdom from that, but the instructions aren't meant for us in 21st century America. Yeah. With the exception of most of, if not all of, Jesus' teachings. Most of Jesus' teachings. I can think of a couple exceptions.
Other thoughts?
Can you speak more to the possibility of, you had mentioned the military units as part of the conquest, that it wasn't necessarily they were going in and, or I don't know, taking over maybe just like a smaller part?
Oh, yes. So I mentioned a couple things that might be relevant as you work through other books. So in Joshua, when the army is going in, whenever we see the numbers of soldiers, every time you see a number ending in 1,000 in your English Bible, there's the possibility that LF should be translated military units, so that far fewer people are actually dying in these battles than we have it in our English Bibles. Let's look at an example. Okay, here's an interesting example. Joshua 7. When they return to Joshua, they have just spied out the city of Ai, A-I. And when they returned to Joshua, they said, "Not all the army will have to go up against Ai. Send 2,000 or 3,000 men to take it, and do not weary the whole army, for only a few people live there." So 2,000 or 3,000 could be 2 or 3 military units. Just send some special forces in, take care of it. Could be what's going on there. So about 3,000.
So that could be like 10 or 15 people, right? If you got like little groups of 5. I think 5 is a relatively decent military unit. If you're thinking of like a squad, I don't know. I don't know much about military unit size, but they're not huge as far as I understand.
Went up. It could be 3 military units went up, but they were routed by the men of Ai, who killed about 36 of them. So, again.
Okay, so a little bit more than I ballparked, obviously. But, I mean, that's, okay, maybe, let's say 50 is a unit. Does that make, because then that would be 150 of them. 36 would be almost a third.
To send 3,000 men and they're routed and only 36 died seems, it seems more likely to me that we've got 3 military units going up. So let's say there's a dozen in each military unit. Oh, that'd be 36. Like, they were routed. They all died. Oh, whoops, we didn't send enough people. I don't know. Sense. I haven't studied this particular instance in depth, but this would be an example of the kind of questions we could ask. Are we looking at military units? Are we looking at thousands? And either is possible, translation-wise.
It would be strange to say, yeah, we sent 3,000 people, exactly 36 died, and nothing about them, and they lost, right? Like, if there's 3,000 people, and it says they chased the Israelites from the city gate, I feel like being down 36 people in a group of 3,000 is not cause for being chased out. But being 36 down in a group of 45, I think that makes more sense.
The other thing that we talked about that I mentioned earlier that's relevant in Joshua is just the size of Jericho and how many people lived there. There's a lot of language in the early part of Joshua that's strong language, like every man, woman, and child, everything that breathed. And I would see this as stock language that you use in an army military conquest or military context. So that whether or not there were women and children there, this is what you say to say we totally smashed them. And the best example I can think of is if your favorite sports team plays an away game and they come home and report, we crushed them. You don't actually think that they crushed, like they, as in killed, obliterated the other team. It means they won the battle decisively. They won the match decisively. And so in a similar way, there's stock language.
There is a lot of like ancient turn of phrase that, like, when we see things like that and it doesn't sit right with us, but then it also doesn't match up with everything else that we're being said about how God's not saying to kill them all, but then Israel's like, yeah, we killed them all, every man, woman, and child. We're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. But if it's literally just like, yeah, no one was left standing in our way, not even a child, that makes a lot more sense when you think about it.
Used for military contexts that is maybe stronger than, we shouldn't push it to be literal. In fact, Joshua itself, even though it will say like, we killed everything that breathed, later in the book, the problem is that there's too many Canaanites they're intermarrying with or worshiping with or whatever, so clearly they didn't kill everyone.
Yeah.
So I think we need to read the book on its own terms and not impose.
And I believe there's even a verse in Joshua that says that they drove them out rather than wiped them out.
Impose like modern standards of journalism on a text that is participating in a way of talking about battles that's common in the ancient world. Nobody's trying to trick us. This is just how you talk about a battle.
In Paul Copan's book, Is God a Moral Monster? Making Sense of the Old Testament God, he also wrote an essay, What About the Canaanites? That I read through. And do you agree with his, like, that it was probably just hyperbolic, that language? So even like the 600,000 men that left Exodus or that left Egypt in the Exodus, that probably wasn't 600,000 men.
600 military units.
I love Copan's book. It's a really helpful book, and I do think in the case of the Conquest, hyperbolic language is very likely. Hyperbolic in the sense, again, not that they're exaggerating, but that they're using language appropriate for a military exploit. But the 600,000 men, I would prefer to say we've translated it wrong. Not that the writer is giving us hyperbole about how many people, but that it's actually not 600,000, it's 600 military units, and the numbers are actually a little more precise. So I think there's a place for hyperbole in Scripture. I'm not convinced that the numbers are that place, but I do think there's stock phrases that function in that way. And that's a very helpful resource we can link in the notes. If people want to read more about the potentially violent texts in the Bible that they're struggling with, I really recommend it. Yeah. All right, that's what we have time for in this session. So in the next session, we are going to look at Exodus 24, which is where the covenant is ratified, put into effect. And we'll have some time to also talk about other laws, so you can bring your questions. If there's another law in the Book of the Covenant that we didn't talk about that you would like to, we'll have some time to do that on the front end.
All right. Well, thank you for hanging out and taking a look at this Bible Project Classroom on Conquest passages. Feel free, leave a comment on anything that was confusing for you, or if you have questions about. I would love to continue to chat about this. We're going to wrap up a little early tonight, and for the next few weeks, we got some stuff going on here in person that I need to be at, and so the time might be a little wonky, but for the most part, throughout the year, we'll be going live at 6:30 and then wrapping up around 7:30. So please continue to come check out these church chat live streams. It's a lot of fun. We get to dive deeper into some stuff, and I'm preparing for making these through the Bible videos anyway. So it helps me, and I think it's beneficial for our church online. So hey, thank you, and please scan the QR code, join our church online Discord to connect throughout the week. And yeah, that'll be it for tonight. Thank you guys, and we'll